remaining 80% current affairs video, and general studies complete videos, please subscribe to our complete package. 4. Child-friendly pediatric TB drugs launched. This topic will be important under General Studies Paper 3. Health, Human Resources and Combating Deadly Diseases. Why recently in news? For the first time, child-friendly TB drugs for first-line medication in a fixed-dose combination was launched by TB Alliance, UNITAID and WHO at the 46th Union World Conference on Lung Health in Cape Town, South Africa. These drugs, which meet the WHO's revised dosage guidelines of 2010, are meant for children weighing less than 25 kilograms. The Mumbai-based McLeod's Pharmaceuticals is the only company manufacturing the child-friendly drugs. How these drugs are fortunate for TB-affected children. The availability of child-friendly TB drugs of correct dosages will increase drug adherence and thereby reduce acquired drug resistance. Since the fixed-dose combinations come in a dissolvable form, tablets no longer need to be crushed. Instead, the required number of pediatric tablets can be dissolved in water. The tablets are flavored, thus making it easier for children. The medicines will cost $15.54 for the 6-month course of treatment. What are first-line drugs? First-line drug is a drug that considered to be the first choice to treat a specific condition. If the first-line agent fails, or if a patient is unable to take the first-line drug, then the second-line drugs will be administered. First-line antibiotics typically are older and less expensive than second-line drugs. Second-line drugs also target a wider range of bacteria than first-line drugs. How can tuberculosis be treated with first-line drugs? TB can be treated effectively by using first-line drugs, FLD, such as isoniazid, INH, rifampin, RIF, pyrazinamide, PZA, etambutol, EMB, and streptomycin, SM. However, this first-line therapy often fails to cure TB for several reasons. What happens if the first-line drugs for TB fails? Failure of first-line drugs due to several reasons leads to spread of disease and finally paving way for emergence of drug-resistant bacteria. The emergence of multi-drug-resistant TB, MDR-TB, which is resistant to at least isoniazid, INH, and rifampicin, RIF, is of great concern, because it requires the use of second-line drugs. Second-line drugs are difficult to procure and are much more toxic and expensive than fields. The second-line injectable drugs for TB are capromycin, kanamycin, and amikacin. Therefore, the detection and treatment of drug-susceptible or single-drug-resistant TB is an important strategy for preventing the emergence of MDR-TB. The way forward in crossing swords with TB. Despite all the advances made in the treatment and management, TB still remains as one of the main public health problems that have plagued mankind for millennia. The challenges posed by M. tuberculosis infection, through its interaction with the immune system and its mechanisms for evasion, require many more breakthroughs to make a significant impact on the worldwide tuberculosis problem. The rapid detection of anti-tuberculosis drug resistance, use of appropriate regimens for treatment, and new drug development are of paramount importance. About UNITAID. UNITAID is engaged in finding new ways to prevent, treat and diagnose HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria more quickly, more cheaply and more effectively. It takes game-changing ideas and turns them into practical solutions that can help accelerate the end of the three diseases. It was established in 2006 by Brazil, Chile, France, Norway and the United Kingdom to provide an innovative approach to global health. UNITAID plays an important part in the global effort to defeat HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, by facilitating and speeding up the availability of improved health tools, including medicines and diagnostics. 5. India has a smart plan for fighting climate change. This topic will be important under General Studies Paper 3. Climate Change Summit Paris and India's success in climate justice. What was India's intimation to global giant emitters in COP21 summit? For many eyes, India looks like a roadblock to an effective world climate deal. But Modi demanded for climate justice, meaning that rich nations should reduce their carbon emissions even as India and others continue to pollute. In the short term, India's carbon emissions are virtually certain to rise. But that doesn't mean the country can't help move the world toward a clean energy future. Why all countries need to respect Modi's climate justice approach. India can't accept a hard limit on emissions when it's still trying to lift hundreds of millions of Indians, more than 20% of whom lack electricity, out of poverty. Western nations are most responsible for the greenhouse gases, historical emissions, now in the atmosphere. India's fuel mix is growing steadily greener. Many banks in India already see more potential in funding solar projects than new coal-fired power plants, so that India can meet demands of cap emissions without really trying. How the investments on mitigation will be economic and sustainable in India. In India, solar power costs $96 per megawatt hour, compared with $107 in the US, according to data from Bloomberg New Energy Finance. So building a new solar plant costs 70% more in the US despite much lower financing costs. Because most of India's infrastructure is only now being built, smart investments can set the country on a sustainable and energy-efficient course. What solution did India suggest the developed countries? It's essential that developed countries also help fund emissions cuts in the developing world. India has pressed developed nations to fulfill their promise to provide $100 billion a year to help India and others develop clean energy. What the country needs more is access to cheaper capital. It's taken welcome steps in this direction by authorizing tax-free investment bonds and by setting up programs to encourage private investment in renewables. India urged rich nations to share carbon space with poor. Prime Minister wants the $100 billion a year plan for assistance from the rich to poor nations by 2020 expedited. A plan to reduce carbon intensity of growth by 33–35% over 2005 levels. India will raise the share of non-fossil fuel power to 40% by 2030, to produce 175 GW of renewable power by 2022. India was the third largest emitter of atmosphere-warming greenhouse gases, 7%, after China, 25%, and the US, 15%. As per historical terms, India's contribution to the cumulative stock of gases already in the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution is negligible, with America occupying the major share. The way forward for India. Better clean and grid technology could allow India to tap its potential for rooftop solar projects, and access to next-generation solar cells could lower costs further. And India could cooperate with Western companies by offering itself as a test bed for new technologies to draw energy from ocean waves and tides, for instance. If India can't raise its climate targets immediately, it should at least not block efforts to scrutinize the progress that all countries are making. In the short term, India's carbon emissions are virtually certain to rise. But that doesn't mean the country can't help move the world toward a clean energy future.